The rain fell heavy that morning, as though the heavens themselves wept with me. My daughter, Claire, lay beneath the ground, far too young to be taken, far too bright a light to be extinguished. I stood by her grave in silence, clutching the rosary beads she had given me years ago. They felt cold in my hand, nothing like the warmth of her smile. Family and neighbors whispered behind me, but I barely heard. My only thought was, how do I go on without her? When the final words were spoken and the mourners drifted away, I stayed, unwilling to let go. That's when I heard the voice I had dreaded. Enough grieving, my son-in-law Daniel said sharply. It's over. She's gone. His words pierced me like a knife. I turned to face him, his expensive black suit perfectly pressed, his expression flat, impatient. He wasn't mourning. He was waiting. Daniel, I whispered, tears catching in my throat. She was your wife. He shrugged, his lips curling in a smirk. And now she's not. Which means this house, he jabbed a finger toward the property just beyond the cemetery gates, is mine. You've got 1 hour to pack up your things and leave. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I thought I had misheard. What did you say? You heard me, he snapped, his voice rising above the sound of the rain. The house is mine now. I won't have you living off me anymore. You've been a burden long enough. I stared at him, shocked beyond words. A burden? I had given my life to raising Claire, to helping them when they struggled, to keeping their home warm and whole when their marriage cracked under pressure. And now, at her funeral, this man who had promised to love her, was throwing me out like trash. My hands shook, but I refused to let him see me crumble. I lifted my chin and forced a smile. Is that so? I said quietly. Very well, Daniel. I'll go. His eyes gleamed with triumph, mistaking my calm for surrender. But deep inside, I felt something stronger than grief begin to stir, something sharper, heavier. Claire had told me once, in her soft, secretive way, that she had plans for me should anything ever happen to her. I never pressed her then, never asked what she meant. But as I turned away from Daniel's sneer, her words echoed in my mind like a hidden promise. And I knew. My daughter had not left me defenseless. The house looked different that night. Not because anything had changed, but because everything had. Without Claire's laughter echoing down the hallway, the rooms felt hollow. The curtains hung lifeless, the old grandfather clock ticked too loudly, and every corner seemed to ache with absence. I sat on the edge of the bed we used to share stories on, clutching one of her sweaters to my chest. The faint scent of her perfume lingered, lavender and vanilla, and it broke me all over again. Downstairs, I could hear Daniel pacing, muttering angrily into his phone. He wasn't grieving, he was planning. He'd wasted no time making the house his. I packed my suitcase slowly, each item a memory I didn't want to leave behind. A photograph of Claire as a child in her yellow raincoat. The quilt we had sewn together during long winter nights. A jewelry box with no jewels, only tiny notes she used to write me when she was away at school. But as I reached the bottom drawer of her dresser, I found something strange. An envelope with my name written in her handwriting. My heart stopped. With trembling fingers I opened it. Inside was a single note. Mom, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't tell you myself. But please don't be afraid. At the will reading, everything will make sense. Trust me, I've made sure he won't win. My breath caught in my chest. Claire had known. She had planned this. I pressed the letter to my lips, tears streaming freely now. She hadn't just thought of me. She had fought for me, even in death. For the first time since she was buried, I felt something other than grief. I felt hope. But that night, Daniel barged into my room. His face was red with fury. You're still here, he barked. Didn't I make myself clear? 1 hour. That's all you had. I folded the letter quickly and slipped it under my pillow. I'll be gone by morning. He sneered. Good. Because tomorrow I'm meeting with the lawyers. Once the will is read, this house, her accounts, everything she owned, it'll all be mine. And you'll finally be out of my life for good. I forced a smile, the same one I gave him at the graveside. Is that so? I murmured. Because deep inside I knew something he didn't. At that will reading, his world would shatter. The morning of the will reading arrived cold and gray. I dressed in silence, folding Claire's letter into my coat pocket as though it were armor. When I arrived at the lawyer's office, Daniel was already there. He leaned back in a leather chair, legs crossed, smirking as though the world already belonged to him. He didn't even look at me when I entered, only muttered, "Let's get this over with." The lawyer, a tall man with tired eyes and a voice that carried weight, shuffled through a stack of papers. "We are here today to execute the last will and testament of Claire Whitmore." At the mention of her name, my chest tightened. Daniel leaned forward, impatient. Yes. Let's not waste time. As her husband, I assume everything passes to me." The lawyer didn't flinch. Instead, he adjusted his glasses and began to read. "To my husband, Daniel." Daniel straightened, a smug grin spreading across his face. "I leave nothing." The grin vanished. His eyes darted up. "What did you just say?" The lawyer cleared his throat and continued. "I leave him no part of my estate, no rights to my home, and no claim to my finances. His treatment of me in life has earned him nothing in death." A stunned silence filled the room. Daniel's face flushed crimson. This is a mistake. She can't do that." The lawyer ignored his outburst. "To my mother, Evelyn." My breath caught. "I leave my home, all my savings and everything I've worked for. She is the one who raised me, the one who stood by me, the one who deserves it all." The words blurred through my tears. My hands trembled in my lap as the reality sank in. Claire had kept her promise. She had shielded me even from the grave. Daniel shot out of his chair, slamming his fist on the table. "This is a lie. She would never cut me out. I was her husband." The lawyer's voice was calm, deliberate. She anticipated this reaction, which is why she left a recorded message. He pressed a button on a small device, and suddenly, Claire's voice filled the room. "Daniel, if you're hearing this, it means you've already tried to take from my mother. You don't deserve a single piece of what I built. You broke my trust, my spirit, and my heart. But you will not break her. This house, this life, it belongs to her, not you." Daniel's face went pale. His mouth opened, but no words came out. I sat frozen, my daughter's voice washing over me like sunlight through a storm. She hadn't just protected me. She had stood up to him in a way she never could while alive. When the recording ended, the lawyer looked directly at Daniel. "The will is binding. You have no legal claim." Daniel collapsed back into his chair, his arrogance stripped away. His eyes flicked toward me, filled with a mixture of hatred and fear. And I couldn't help it. I smiled. Because Claire had won. The lawyer's office emptied quickly after the will was finalized. The other attendees offered me quiet nods of respect. Some even whispered, "She must have loved you deeply." But Daniel stayed rooted in his chair, trembling with rage. His fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. When the lawyer excused himself, Daniel leaned across the table, his eyes burning into mine. "You think you've won, don't you?" he hissed. I met his glare calmly. "It wasn't me who won, Daniel. It was Claire. She made her choice." He slammed his hand against the polished wood. "That house should have been mine. That money should have been mine. I gave her years of my life. Years of cruelty." I cut in, my voice steady. "For the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of him. She saw you for who you were, Daniel. And now the world will too." He pushed away from the table, his chair scraping harshly against the floor. "You'll regret this," he spat. "You're old, alone, and weak. Without Claire, you're nothing. That fortune won't change that." I stood slowly, clutching Claire's letter in my coat pocket. "You're wrong," I said softly. "She made sure I'd never be nothing again." As I walked out of the office, Daniel's threats followed me down the hall. But for the first time since the funeral, his words didn't shatter me. That night, I returned to the house. My house. The rooms that had felt hollow were suddenly alive with Claire's presence. Every corner whispered her love. Every item reminded me that she had trusted me to carry her legacy forward. That I sat in her favorite armchair, staring at the fireplace, when I realized something. Daniel's fight wasn't over. Men like him didn't walk away quietly. His pride, his greed, wouldn't let him. But neither would mine. Claire had armed me with more than money or property. She had given me the courage to face him, and whatever storm he might bring. And this time, I wouldn't walk away in silence. Days passed quietly, but I knew it was only a matter of time before Daniel struck back. It happened one cold evening. I returned home to find the back door forced open, drawers pulled apart, and documents scattered across the floor. Daniel stood in the living room, sweating, frantic, rifling through papers. When he saw me, his face twisted with desperation. "Where is it?" he demanded. "The trust papers, the hidden accounts. I know Claire left you more than what's written." I stepped forward, unshaken. "You're trespassing, Daniel. Leave now before I call the police." He laughed bitterly. "You think the law will protect you? That fortune should be mine. I was her husband." I pulled Claire's letter from my pocket and held it up. "No, Daniel. You were her mistake. And she made sure I'd have proof of everything you did. The debts, the infidelity, the cruelty. It's all documented. You try to fight me, this letter goes public." For the first time, his confidence cracked. His face drained of color. "You wouldn't," he whispered. "Oh, I would," I replied coldly. The sound of sirens grew in the distance. I had already dialed 911 when I saw the broken door. Daniel bolted toward the exit, but the flashing red and blue lights stopped him. He froze, trapped between me and the officers rushing in. As they cuffed him, his eyes met mine. The same pale, terrified look he wore at the will reading. And this time I smiled. Daniel's arrest made headlines the next morning. Fraud, extortion, and decades of hidden debts came to light. Claire's lawyers handed over every document she had kept, proving how carefully she had prepared for this moment. In court, Daniel looked like a shell of the man who once sneered at me, ordering me out of the house after her funeral. The judge read the charges aloud, and each word carved another crack in his arrogance. When the sentence was finally given, he collapsed into his chair. He had lost everything, his freedom, his reputation, and his chance to ever touch Claire's fortune. I walked out of that courtroom with Claire's letter pressed against my chest. She had left me more than wealth. She had left me her strength, her love, and her final victory over the man who tried to erase us both. At home, I placed the letter beside her photo on the mantel. For the first time since her passing, I felt a peace settle in my heart. Daniel thought he could break me in an hour. But in the end, Claire and I had built a lifetime's worth of justice, together. And justice had the last word.